welcome to Down to Art. I'm your host, Kristy Gordon, and today I'm talking to our returning guest, Kate Horowitz, about how to manage our energy so that we can have the maximum capacity to do our creative work. So, welcome, Kate. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this. I've been so excited about this ever since we came up with this idea. So this is a big thrill for me.
Me too. And Kate's work has appeared in national publications, including The Atlantic and Bitch magazine, as well as on matchboxes and tarot cards, and in anthologies about destruction, inanimate objects, and the occult. And as I mentioned, Kate is a previous guest on this podcast. So if you haven't heard our first episode on the creative process, I highly recommend that. It's the first episode on this podcast. So in our last conversation, you were nearing the end of your writing on your book proposal. And if I remember correctly, you were feeling pretty stuck. Can you give us an update on how it's going and how did you manage to get unstuck?
Yeah, so I don't know if I got unstuck so much as I kept going through the stuckness. And that was something we talked about last time is I realized that okay, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I don't think it's going to succeed, but I made a commitment to myself to finish this proposal and I'm going to do it. And so that's what I did. And I finished it and I decided to set it aside for a little while I did some many other obligations, but life intervened. I was not planning to start reaching out to literary agents, but that is exactly what happened. And I ended up interacting with a few, and I met one who just seems wonderful. And so I have now signed with an agent, which feels so strange to say out loud. And I don't think it's entirely sunk in yet. But what this means is that despite my plans, I am now writing the book. Right now, I am writing the book, and
Wow.
I am very excited and also terrified, which I think is something I say a lot now that I think about it.
Oh, and it's so amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you here for the entire thing. Your support has been really helpful.
Oh, and it's just so inspiring though, being able to have like being a part of this process and for our listeners too, because like you say, like if people listen to our last episode, what really always struck me was that you were talking about how like convincing the voices were that were telling you it wasn't good enough. And I hear that from like artists all the time. And but what struck me about what you were saying with that was that you were like, you know, they're very convincing voices, these thoughts in my head, but there was like a step of being removed from it, that you weren't just like, I really think I'm not good enough. But I know like when those voices are so loud, it can really feel that way. But just yeah, but then you push through it, you finished the proposal, it's really good. And like you thought it was going to take like a really long time to get an agent, and that it's like so hard. Like we always hear how hard it is for a writer to get an agent, and you got one like almost right away. So I just think it's like really inspiring to everyone to be a part of that process. And like you say, it's all about managing our energy. Like there's so much to do, as an artist and as any sort of creative person, and we have all these big goals and everything, but there's so much to do, and then life like can pull at us. And I have the mindset that we're given like enough energy to do all the things that we need to do, like in, for ourselves, like in each day, but really only that amount. And so there does come a point where we have to say no to like a lot of the extraneous stuff that really isn't part of our life mission. So yeah, how's your energy, these days? And what are you kind of finding is working in terms of managing your energy?
The honest answer is that my energy today and my energy lately has been extremely chaotic. I am feeling pulled dramatically in many directions at once, and so many of those directions feel extremely important to me. I've been physically very tired and have been working to try to not push myself beyond what I'm capable of doing. But there are things that I'm working on that are energizing to me, and there are things that I'm working on that are draining to me. And it's a constant negotiation to figure out where to put that energy and also to follow what is energizing without expending too much of the energy that I need for everything else.
Yeah, it is a real balance, for sure, because there are like those things that are draining too, like sometimes they have to get done, and like, and if we don't do them, it can kind of like also become a drain on our energy, like just kind of subtly nag at us or whatever. What do you do with the things that are draining to your energy but do have to get done? Like, do you have any strategies for those particular items?
I have a million. So for me, one of the biggest parts of it that I've been realizing, especially in the last few weeks, and this touches a bit back on our conversation in the last time I was on the show, is that is really taking a hard look at the items that are draining and that I feel like I have to do and asking myself, do I actually have to do this? And if so, do I actually have to do this today?
Mhm.
As we discussed last time, I am somebody who lives and dies by to-do lists and every kind of list and schedules and calendars. And these are adaptive tools that help me manage my energy and help me predict how I'm going to use my energy and to budget it wisely. But I think that sometimes I can fall into the trap of thinking just because I've written it down, I have to do it. And so something that has been really useful for me lately is applying mindfulness to my to-do list and looking at the items and thinking, okay, I wrote this down and I plan to do it. Does this actually need to be done, or is this just something that I think I should be doing, or something that I wanted to do 3 weeks ago that isn't actually a good use of my time right now? And what I'm finding is that a lot of items can drop off the to-do list without the world falling apart.
That's true. That is like totally true. um it's kind of funny, like we feel like it'll all fall apart if we don't do it all, but then we just don't do it all and nothing happens.
Nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
It's wild. I mean, obviously there are some things, there are in fact many things in life that do need to get done that don't spark joy for us. But
Yeah.
the other part of it is that some of those things, if we can give it focused attention, they're over pretty quickly. They take a lot less time than we think they're going to take. They take a lot less energy than we
Yeah.
think they're going to take. And we actually expend more energy dreading them or
Oh, totally.
anticipating them than actually doing them.
Yeah, totally. Like our tax season's just wrapping up, so I'm thinking
Exactly.
like of my taxes. And yeah, I just totally dread them. I hate doing it. It's so complicated for me. Yeah, and like kind of I use the same kind of technique that I use with like a lot of things. I try and just do like small bits every single day, like something really manageable, like half an hour of torture on my taxes every single day. And this year it only took a week, and every now and then there's like some little extra tidbit that I have to like do or whatever on it. But when I'm actually doing it, it's not as terrible as it seems like it's going to be. Like I'm just like adding up receipts. Like it's not terrible or whatever. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think the dread of the thing can be so much more draining than just getting it done and
Yeah.
crossing it off.
Yeah. And I do think that's the type of thing that if I don't do it, like it becomes an energy drain too, because I'm just kind
Hmm.
of dreading it in the back of my mind, and my whole life is like feeling like I can't deal with it. So it's like not that bad to just like do it and then not have that dread hanging over me or something. Um yeah, but then, and then there's also learning to say no to other things that you just like aren't really that excited about, that you definitely don't have to do, but it's still hard to have boundaries sometimes, like in life. What have you kind of discovered around boundaries and managing your energy?
That is going to be a lifelong process. It is so difficult. It is so difficult even to say no to things that I thought I wanted or sought out or at one time wanted, but that
Mm-hmm.
don't fit anymore. And again, it's kind of a process of constant reassessment of what I need right now, what serves right now. At the moment, I am in a place where I am extremely overcommitted, truthfully, and I need to start paring down. I need to start making some difficult decisions around what I'm doing and where I'm putting my time and energy in order to, as you say, I agree with you, we probably only have enough energy to do what we need to do, what is most important. And sometimes we don't even have that much energy.
Yeah.
And it is very easy to get excited and to overcommit or to have ideas about what we'll want to be doing. But so often life just kind of cuts in and changes things. Your plans are great and useful to have, but life is going to intervene,
Mhm.
which is definitely what I've found with my book project. I was not anticipating being in this place with it or being needing to expend or wanting to expend energy on it right now. I thought I would be taking a break, but instead I'm
Mhm.
quite focused on it while I'm trying to focus on many other things. And so really assessing um, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Gosh, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but really taking a very cold look at the number of
Mhm.
hours in the day and what I want to be doing, what I need to be doing, what I think I should be doing. These are all different things. And focusing on in this moment, which of these things matters and what kind of energy do I have and where can I put it?
Yeah, it actually makes me think of a type of list that I make frequently, which is like the list of everything that's bothering me. And I
Mm.
recently made one of these lists. And one of the things that was bothering me is that I wasn't actually doing that much work on my personal paintings, like my own personal work. I was doing a lot of work on a lot of things that I'm excited about, but I wasn't like doing that much work on my own personal paintings. And just like, having that crystallized along with all the other things that were bothering me made me start to like just like one by one kind of see what I could do to kind of remedy all these things that are bothering me. So, like the next day I put like a lot of time in on one of my personal paintings. And of course I have my other to-do list, which is like a mile long. Well, not really. It's like very clear. There's like certain, maybe there's 5 to 10 various things that I could be doing, but they're not like I don't have to do them today, and it was clear from my like things that are bothering me list that what was really important to me like was to like spend some time working on my own work or whatever. Yeah.
I love that. It's funny because as you know, I've been making this list pretty much since the start of the year, almost every day, almost every morning, a list of what I want today.
Mm,
And the contents of the list have really evolved. At the beginning, the point of the list was to identify for myself what are things that I desire, which is sometimes hard for me to identify, but also what are attainable things that I desire that I can then take action to attain for myself. But
yeah.
over time, the list has changed. There's a lot of flux with it. But one of the things that I've noticed lately is that on work days, because I have a 9 to 5 as well, often one of the things that I will want is to invest a certain amount of energy at work. So I will say, I want to be an A+ student today at work. I want to be a C- student today at work. And what happens is once I identify that, I can choose to invest that much energy in my day job. The work always gets done, but it's a really useful way of noticing what feels like the appropriate amount to
Hmm.
spend that day.
Yeah. Yeah, intentionality like behind like at the beginning of our day about what we like think would be good for the day can really make a big difference. Yeah, and that clarity. And then like it's really interesting. You were talking to, I know we talk like pretty much every day. You were talking about how like overwork is like a trauma response, like a fight and flight response, or I guess it's a flight response. And how hard it can be to just like actually kind of stop doing things. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. Yes, this is something that's been very alive for me the last few years. I think it's something that has always been true for me, but not so much something that I've examined. And so, overwork can definitely be a trauma response, a stress response in the sort of fight, flight, freeze, fawn model. There's flight, which is a sort of kind of prey response where you feel like you just have to keep running, you have to keep going. If you stop moving, then something will get you. If you
Mm,
stop moving, then you will not be good enough or you will not be safe. And this is definitely something that is in me. And it's a reason that I feel so driven, like driven as in impelled forward. And it's
mhm.
very difficult for me to slow down. It's very difficult for me to stop. It often feels quite scary or even unsafe for me to slow down, to even breathing, or if I take a yoga class or on YouTube, for example, I notice I'm looking at the progress bar the entire time, wondering when it's going to be over. So I think that that is a way simultaneously of burning myself out and protecting myself from this stress of slowing down. And it's very challenging because it is more comfortable for me to do too much, but it's not necessarily better for me.
Yeah, I think like that awareness is super interesting. I had never really thought about that, but I think I think I'm the same, but I had never really thought about the roots of it. And yeah, just like having that in my mind as as I try to wind down might help me notice like why why I'm finding it so hard to just actually like wind down. And like um you and I are both like really productive people and stuff, and so it's like we have to like convince ourselves like that it's like we have to talk ourselves through it, that it's like okay to take a break sometimes. Like sometimes that's like the most productive thing we can do.
Absolutely. And I think part of what is useful for me is noticing that perhaps what's relaxing for other people is not going to be relaxing for me. Maybe I just am not going to have any chill for a while. And so maybe I can find activities that are relaxing to me that allow me to still kind of let off some of this flight energy. Cardio
Yeah.
is a great example. Cardio exercise makes me feel terrific and it's really, really good for me. And I actually try to do it every day. And it still lets me kind of run and wear myself out. But it's just it's a really healthy, much healthier way of channeling it. Obviously, in moderation for sure. But that sort of thing that allows me to um, not interrupt this energy or not try to change myself or suddenly rewire my nervous system to be a different type um, allows me to even maintain or even replenish my energy without setting me off or challenging me in a way that's going to just take me down or wear me out. The other side of it is that much of my much of the conflict is that the work that I'm doing is work I'm really excited to be doing and work that gives me energy.
Hmm.
And so I get very invested in something and I want to put a lot of time in it. And it replenishes me and it fills my energy. And there are a lot of other things requiring energy from me as well. And so it's just that constant push and pull and balancing act of figuring out how to refill my cup and keep myself moving and not overstress myself while also not overdoing it.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm just like you, like, yeah, doing cardio or something is like or even just going for a long walk for me. Those are like
Mhm.
really like it's like walking meditation or something. And I
Mm.
do try to do real meditation. Well, real meditation. I guess walking meditation is like still real, but where you sit there and you kind of try and be quiet and whatnot. But sometimes that is like extra stressful because then I'm like, oh, I'm not being quiet in my mind. And it's just, sometimes I just sit there with all my stresses, and that's okay too. But it is nice when my mind gets the actual like relaxation that it like wants so much. So yeah, it's a really good strategy to find something that can be relaxing like cardio, but still keep that kind of running sensation, like let it sort of play itself out or something.
Another thing that's been really helpful for me is adapting things that are often considered relaxing so that they're not stressful for me. So, for example, in the last year or so, have started giving myself permission to fidget while I'm meditating, or to move, or not to
Mm.
close my eyes, or other things that make it less stressful for me. I'm not fighting myself the entire time.
Hmm.
Or if I need to lie down, then I'll lie down. So to really look at what the spirit of the thing is, and to take that and adapt it and not feel shame or guilt or like I'm doing it wrong, but to
Yeah.
do it in a way that actually supports me and actually has the desired effect. Because if I'm focusing on sitting perfectly still, keeping my eyes closed, breathing the way that I'm supposed to, which for me, as somebody who has both trauma and asthma, can be quite difficult. It's tough. And so
Yeah.
I often adapt meditations so that they're not focused on breathing. I don't choose ones that are focused on breathing, but I like to choose exercises that meet me where I am and don't require me to contort myself into something else just to quote, relax.
Yep. Actually, that's like so true. And I feel like that works for me like a lot in all areas of my life. Like the more I'm trying to be what I think I'm supposed to be or something, the more I'm like frustrated that I'm not. But then when I can just like accept that I'm whatever I am, then I don't know, it just like eases the whole situation up. Like yeah, really in all areas of my life. Yeah. So that's really cool.
This is actually making me think of one of our ongoing conversations that we've had about managing energy in work settings and specifically on Zoom, and the
Ah,
ways
yeah.
that, because you and I both spend a lot of time on Zoom in meetings or teaching or all sorts of different avenues, conferences, things like that. And Zoom is draining for everybody, I believe, but it can be more draining for certain people than others. And I have been working, and I know that you've been working as well, to find ways to adapt my experience on video chat to
Mhm.
not have it suck the entire life out of me.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
for a while, if I attended a 1 hour meeting, I would be done for the entire day after that.
me too.
It's so incredibly draining, the pressure to have your face looking correct, even when the audio is often cutting in and out. So there's a lot of sort of static or stress or audio stress there. It's difficult to know where to look. Being forced to look at your own face is just terrible, and no human should ever
Yeah.
have to do that. There's a lot of pressure to have your face look a certain way
Yes.
even when you're not speaking, which is not usually a thing that would happen in real life conversations. We look at the speaker, but in Zoom, everybody is just staring at you or could be staring at you the entire time. And so I expend a lot of energy to try to make sure my face is correct.
Yep.
And it's an incredibly draining experience, and it just doesn't have to be. And so, something that I've been working to do in my workplace and in a lot of my conversations is just to explicitly say, I have a sensory processing disorder. I find being on camera overstimulating and exhausting. So whenever I'm not speaking, I'm going to turn off my camera. And
Hmm.
often people respond to that by saying, great, we can all turn our cameras off if you want, or great, no problem, or sure, that sounds good. Nobody has ever, at least to my face or to my little Zoom photo, objected or had any concerns about that. And in fact, people have thanked me for modeling a different way of doing this. And it allows me to be much more present and
Yeah.
not completely focused on how tired I'm getting.
Totally. Yeah. Um, yeah, and I know we've also talked about like just trying to like sometimes I notice that my whole body is tight. Like I'm definitely
Mm,
being hyper vigilant about what my face looks like, and it's exhausting. And then I also have my whole body tight and maybe my hands tight. So even something just
mhm,
like trying to allow myself to breathe, which seems like so
mm.
It's like I can't believe that I'm like sitting there not breathing pretty much and like relax, just let my arms fall to my side. I'm doing it right now and open up my hands. Like something like that can like really just change my kind of body position and my feeling on Zoom. And then ideally having my camera off. It's like, but even if I have my camera on, I can suddenly let my arms fall to my side and open up my hands and breathe.
Hmm.
That all is like not visible on camera. Because yeah, it's like exhausting for me. And I'm so glad that we've talked about all of this stuff and found ways to like manage manage our energy through all this Zoom stuff, because that's like a new thing. Yeah, and then I know we also talked a little bit about, I mean, you've kind of like gotten good at sometimes identifying some of the fears behind like when you're going to take a break, and you like, you know, have noticed it's hard to take a break, you're maybe in flight response when you're working so hard, and then getting in touch with like what are some of the specific like fears that come up, around that. Do you want to talk a bit about some of those specific fears that you've identified?
Sure. Super vulnerable, but I think I mentioned that that was fair game, so I'm happy to discuss.
And I can relate to every of them. I think that being able to pinpoint it, because sometimes it's just a niggling fear and we just feel
Mm,
anxiety. But I feel like once we put it into words and crystallize it, then it loses its power.
so much so, so much. So, one of the fears for me, of course, as I've already discussed, is the fear of just stopping, period, and the feeling of being chased or not safe if I slow down.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there are a few different factors, and one of them is a fear of being left behind or becoming irrelevant or failing to keep up with my peers. And
Mm-hmm.
I have lived with chronic illness my entire life, and I also have a full-time job, and in addition to the teaching work that I do and the creative writing that I do, and now this book project. And I am not able to produce creative work at the same pace as a lot of my peers who may not have full-time jobs or who may not have disabilities or chronic illnesses. And I am constantly feeling as though they have overtaken me. And many of my peers from graduate school, for example, not many of them, but some of my peers from graduate school who are in the same classes as me have published multiple books by now. And while I know comparison is very much the thief of joy, it is hard not to feel as though I am deficient for not having the same amount of energy or even time as they have to produce this work. And so there's part of me that feels as though I am behind in my career and that I can't possibly slow down until I've caught up. But of course, you can't ever catch up. Uh, that's not possible. And also, there's no particular place that I'm supposed to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am where I am. There is nobody measuring things. There's nobody out there looking at my accomplishments and saying, well, she's 45 accomplishments behind right now. She better pick up the pace. That's not happening. It is entirely in my head. Um, and I have perhaps a vain hope that if I complete this book project and when it's done and when it's out in the world, then maybe then,
Mm-hmm.
maybe then I'll feel like I can relax, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah. 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 And then there's the idea. Well, I always love to hear that we're all like exactly where we're supposed to be. Love it. I like to remind myself about that. And I'm sure everyone can, I mean, I think so many people at least can definitely relate to, yeah, this feeling of like, I should be like further ahead, and I'm, that kind of thing. And then I think you also mentioned that there can be a fear underlying stopping working even just for a day or whatever, that like you'll kind of lose momentum and never start again.
Definitely. It is so hard for me to take a break. And the other element of this that I definitely want to name is capitalism and ableism that tells us that we are only valuable while we are producing. And
Mm.
that is real and that is buried deep inside of us. And it is very hard
Mm.
to shut those voices down or to disregard them. I can't overstate
True.
that enough.
Yeah.
The feeling that the only good body is a working body and the only good person is a
Yeah.
producing person. And so that
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, make sure to mention that too. But yeah, I think that as we discussed in the last episode, there is sometimes a belief that creativity is like this rare butterfly that might pass us once, and if we don't chase it and chase it and chase it, and then we're going to lose it. And
Right.
so often when I'm in the middle of something, it doesn't feel safe to stop because what if I lose it? But as you have taught me so well, if we show up for the work will show up for us.
Yeah.
And we can stop, and the work will be there when we get back.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like so powerful to just be able to like realize that it doesn't take our like constant like stress and pressure and like forcing or whatever. Like it actually works better if we have like a slightly relaxed atmosphere about the whole situation and like take breaks when we need it and then can kind of like know that we can like circle back and keep working. And but anyways, I just think that like naming your fears like this is so powerful because I really find that it takes the power away from the fear as soon as I name it. uh and until I do, sometimes it just like has way more power over me because I don't even know what it is. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
another part of it is that it is really useful for me to remind myself that a lot of making art does not happen while you're sitting down at your computer or standing at your
yes,
easel.
no,
Art happens. I know you're really good at this. You go to galleries, you go to museums, you go to events, you look at art books, you replenish yourself and you live, you go dance. And this is, I think, more than half of making art is just being alive and living your life and
yeah,
experiencing things. If I don't do anything, I have nothing to write about. If I don't go to the library and fill my arms with art books, I have nothing to really like keep those juices flowing. We need to interact with art and with the world and with nature and with other people to feed ourselves spiritually and socially and all of those things, and also to feed our art. And so it sometimes helps me to take a break, if I want to call it
uh-huh,
that, to
yep.
frame it as I need to do some living now.
100%, because this even kind of goes back to like the first conversation we had on in the first episode of this podcast. It's like a lot of the time, and I'm sure most people have found this, like the sparks of inspiration, like when we're looking for kind of like an answer to a particular maybe challenge on a piece that we're working on. Like a lot of the time, those sparks come to us when we're like in a relaxed state. We've been engaged in the project on a regular basis, but maybe now we're on a walk or we're like in the shower or whatever, and our mind has kind of like slightly let go a little bit, although it's still engaged in it because we have been working on it regularly. It's not like we've put it down for like an entire year or something like that. But that's really when like the answers seem to come to me. It's like when I go for a walk, or I mean, for me, it is a lot of the time when I go for a walk. And I think different people probably can find the different things for you. You know, I know you talked about like cardio and yeah, and just different ways of like relaxing ourselves. But I'm so glad you mentioned that. Like, it's so true that a lot of the art is done like in the background of my mind as I'm living life, and then the execution or whatever is like, yeah, done at the easel for me or whatever. Um, yeah.
A lot of my ideas, a lot of my solutions, as you say, happen while I'm in the shower. And I live in an apartment, and I imagine my neighbors on the other side of the who are on the other side of the bathroom wall must think everything is just bizarre in my house, because when I have an idea in the shower, I keep wanting to get one of those shower notepads so I can take notes while I'm showering. But if I have an idea or a realization while I'm in the shower, I will just say it out loud and then just start talking about it as much as I can, because I know that if I talk about it, I can hear myself say it, then I won't forget it as easily, because I really
Yeah.
don't want to forget it. And so there's a lot of just like working through writing questions or solving essay problems or coming up with new lines for poems while I'm shampooing my hair.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone can relate to that. Like, I think showers are a place of a lot of inspiration for a lot of people. Um, so do you have anyone that you look to as sort of like a good role model for managing how they manage their energy? Sometimes it's useful to kind of have someone who's kind of modeling it. Do you have anything like that?
One person who I give a lot of credit to and whose work I really, really admire and am constantly amazed by is Trisha Hersey, um, who goes by the Nap Bishop and who has an organization called the Nap Ministry. And her work is a lot about refusing the capitalist instruction to just produce, 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 go, go, go. And she's coming at it from an orientation of rest as resistance, specifically for Black and African American people. But the messages stand for everyone, that rest is not only important, it's revolutionary. And
Hmm.
I find all of her work incredibly galvanizing. She does or performance art installations, which is probably not the right term for it, but she does installations where people will just gather collectively and nap. And it's really, really, really powerful. And she has a lot of really useful messages about thinking about your energy as precious, your time as
Hmm.
precious, and the pause as both sacred and radical. And I
Yeah.
draw a lot of inspiration from her work. How about
Wow,
you?
that's really interesting. For me, I was thinking about this idea of setting boundaries like in our life. Like I know when I first like stumbled upon the idea about setting boundaries, it was like practically the first time I'd ever thought about it, say like 7 or 8 years ago. And I was like really not very good at it, so it was like really hard to set boundaries. I would do it poorly, like in the way where I might be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to. You can't make me, or whatever. Just like kind of confrontational and not very tactfully done. So I guess I'm just thinking about the people in my life who I can look at. Like, I can't say anyone specific, but I know there's like a lot of people around me that like they manage to set boundaries in really tactful, clever ways where you hardly
Mm.
know what's hit you. Like they're just like, yeah, I'm available for this. And then the
Mm.
underlying suggestion is like, and I'm not available for that, So just learning like ways that are a little bit more clever to like and tactful and just make ease, to like set boundaries without it becoming like a big production.
That is
Yeah.
so true. I am absolutely in awe of people. And whenever one of those boundaries is set with me, I just feel grateful and appreciative.
Hmm.
I think I've probably told you this story before, but a few years ago, I was writing an article about the process of writing about your own chronic illness or disability. And I reached out to some very prominent writers, phenomenal writers, to see if I could interview them to talk about their experience publishing and speaking publicly about their experience being ill or disabled. And I reached out to one writer whose work I really admired, and I asked if I could interview her. And she wrote a very brief but very reasonable email back saying she does not do interviews about her illness anymore because it just exhausts her and saddens her and drains her. And she's just not going to do that. And I was so grateful.
Yep.
I wish we all had the wherewithal and the confidence and just the power to do that. And we do. It's accessible to us, but we have to take advantage of it. And I think about that email from her all the time. I wrote back to her and I thanked her and I just said, "Thank you for modeling this. I think we all need to see it." I was
Yeah.
really glad that she said no to that interview, even though I would have loved to have talked to her.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like the learning how to set boundaries work that I've done has been with other people setting good boundaries with me. And then also there's like the people who've like done it really poorly or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I hope I never do it that way or whatever. Um, But yeah, but I too am really grateful for like the people who've basically set boundaries with me, like in a really tactful way, because that's how I learn how it can be done, basically. Yeah. And there's like this idea too, well, you and I have talked about this, that like how to know if we want to say yes to something or if we want to say
Mm,
no. And I know for a little while there when we were both kind of feeling maybe lower energy and stuff, and maybe it's just a good like practice in life, that like if it's not a resounding yes, then maybe it's a no. Like sometimes it's hard to
mhm.
like kind of know, like we're like, oh, maybe I want to, maybe I don't know. But it's like when our heart tells us yes, it's kind of like, yeah, definitely. And so if it's not like saying that, then like maybe it's a no. I don't know. What do you think about how to figure out what we even want and what our heart is telling us?
Oh, that is so hard. It's so hard. I think enthusiastic consent or none at all is a really good model, but it can be really difficult to dig deep enough into the core of yourself to identify it. And I think for
Mhm.
me, one of the ways that I am able to do that is I need to be alone. I need to be completely alone and quiet, and I need to have enough time to think and reflect without any pressure or anybody else's input for a while. And then I need to look at all of the factors toward whether or not I want to do something, and then I need to set those aside. And then there's just the like really like listening for that still small voice that says yes or no.
Hmm.
And even then,
Yeah.
once you hear it, it's sometimes hard to accept it.
Hmm. Yeah, that is true. Like not always looking to advice from everyone else about everything, but sort of eventually knowing that like somewhere inside us we have the answer, and like maybe everyone else is telling us something else, but maybe our heart is telling us this one particular, thing, and like we can trust ourselves. We just have to kind of go into ourselves, give us some. That's another reason that we need to manage our energy, because so that we
Hmm.
have time to sit alone, and listen to like our still small voice in our head about answers to whatever we're kind of seeking answers to. Yeah.
So much. And I do think that that part of it, the information gathering or the support seeking or just asking people that you respect and trust for their advice, that is an important step. That's definitely an important
Hmm.
step. I love to hear from people who have done the thing that I'm thinking about doing or who have some similar experience or who just really care about me, what they think. And
Yeah.
then I will also take that in, absorb it, turn it over, and set that aside as well. And like,
Yeah.
it's information, but it's not the only information. And the most important information has to come from me.
Yeah, but you're right. It is important to like get other in like get an input, like share it with people, talk to people about it and stuff like that too, to like build information so that that you're looking at it sort of at it really rationally. I feel like that's how I can be sure that I'm like, yeah, looking at it like logically with all factors considered or whatever, and then go into my inner voice or something like that.
I think
Yeah.
that it's one thing that I've been working on that I think I will be working on my entire life is teasing out what is gut and intuition and what is programming or stress or trauma or that sort of message that feels primal but might not
Hmm.
be what serves me best right now. And
Yeah.
so sometimes what feels instinctive may be more reactive. And I think that I've
Hmm.
been focusing a lot lately on responding, not reacting. And that can be quite difficult to tease out. Often my reaction is to say yes to things, to do more things, to take on more work. But if I'm able to say, okay, I notice that that is what I feel like I should do, but what do I want and what is right for me? The answers are
Hmm.
often quite different.
That's so true. Like, actually, it reminds me that when we kind of came up with this idea, it's not our idea, but of, like when in doubt, leave it out. Like, and if it's not like a resounding yes, you'll say no. It was really actually almost in the context of like opposite action. Like, you were
Mm.
noticing an opposite, taking opposite action can be like a really good technique for making big changes in our life. And since you had been noticing that your tendency is to just say yes to everything, we were kind of figuring, well, maybe you should just start saying no to everything unless you're like, it's a really big yes. Because I think you're right. Like there, and I really love that point. And I think I'll be teasing it out for the rest of my life too, about trying to figure out what my intuition is telling me versus what is this kind of instinctual primal like reaction that I just like have. That's like, yeah, it's like so complicated to figure out because it might feel like intuition because it's like so primal or whatever. It's so automatic for me. And so yeah, taking opposite action is sometimes at least eye-opening anyways. At least I'm doing something differently.
I think one of the most important tools that I have that you have taught me a lot about is just the pause button.
Yeah,
Because
I
if
love
we
it.
don't stop, if we just keep going, then we're going to keep making the same habitual decisions. And in my case, taking on more work that might not suit me or that may not serve me, saying yes to more things that might not serve me. But if I pause, then I actually have space to
Mm,
respond and not react. So I think that that's
totally.
another really useful tool. If you can pause and be still and be alone and kind of absorb and synthesize and then set all that aside and just listen um, before
Yeah.
acting or reacting.
That is so true. And it does totally go back to everything we were talking about. Because yeah, I love the pause button. And when I first started using the pause button, it felt like the world would collapse. And like, if I
Hmm.
don't do something in this very minute, but actually, I could normally wait 24 hours and the world wouldn't collapse. Like, I could just really put that pause button on and then yeah, and then respond instead of react. That's like so true and actually such a good reminder. I love that one.
A very wise person once said to me, very few things in this life are actually an emergency. Very,
Yeah.
very few. And I try to keep
Mm,
that in mind. And often when something feels most urgent is when I'm just most activated
yeah.
and it can wait.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be acting if I'm feeling that urgent and that stress because I'm not coming from the place that is going to be most aligned with managing the energy the way I want it to, or setting
Exactly.
intentions or moving in the direction that's going to be best for me and for everybody.
Yeah. That's exactly true because I really kind of like use my intuition in like my art business decisions or whatever and figuring out how to kind of gracefully navigate any situation that comes up. But it always takes like a little bit of a pause, especially when people are activated or anything like that, to just like figure out the kind of most graceful way of like dealing with something. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It just takes like the pause button and then that intention, just like coming back to my intention, like, oh, I want a harmonious relationship between, these, various pieces of moving pieces in some kind of art project or whatever. And there's always an answer, but it doesn't come to me when I'm like all flustered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing that's coming to mind is that I think I mentioned this. I mean, I know I mentioned this to you, but that at the beginning of this year, I don't do New Year's resolutions, but I set down. I created a long list of guideposts for myself, and I took a few days to reflect on how I could conserve and protect my energy and what kinds of actions I could take and what sort of things I wouldn't do in order to really stay within the amount of energy that I have and to really use it strategically and wisely and in alliance with what I want to be doing and in alignment. And so some of the guideposts were things like unsubscribe from most newsletters so that I don't have that cluttering up my inbox and my mind, or
Yep.
check social media less often, look out the window more often, or say no to unpaid work,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
example.
Yep.
And writing this down was really, really useful in the moment. But more than that, now when I'm in a place where I don't know what to do, I can just go back and look at the list, and the answer might already be there. or it might just put me in
Hmm.
the right frame of mind to make a decision that is going to support me better.
Yeah, that's why I really love like lists or like just getting super clear about like what we want and what we don't want or whatever because yeah, then we do find ourselves even if we almost forget about the list, we sort of find ourselves just like reorienting in such a way that like it kind of yeah, resolves those areas or moves in that certain direction or whatever, and then maybe we go back to the list and we're like, oh wow, I did really, I mean, or you can have the list up all the time and always be kind of going back to it. That like that really works too. But yeah, it takes like a bit of time to write a list, but I just think it's like so useful. It gives us like clear direction, like concrete steps and sort of strat like boundaries and concrete boundaries around our life about what we will and what will not be doing. Yeah.
I'm somebody who is most relaxed and comfortable when there are clear instructions, directions, parameters, and I've figured out that I can provide those for myself. They don't have to come
Yeah.
from somebody else. In fact, it's great if I can provide them for myself. So if I'm in a moment of mindfulness and presence, and I can think about what I need and write it down, when I'm frantic later and urgent and overtaxed and overextended,
Yeah.
I can just check the instructions, and that takes a lot less energy than having to create them all over again.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because actually, I remember when you made that list, and I think like a little bit after you made the list, some kind of unpaid work opportunity did come up. Actually, I remember what your thing on the list was. It was like no unpaid work unless you're really excited about it.
That was it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And so that did come up, and you were like, okay, so this is unpaid work, but actually, this is a case where I'm really excited about it. And so I am going to do it. But it was just cool to be able to see you have that like ability to make the decision, like with your list kind of backing you up, like it gives you a little confidence around the decision and stuff like that.
It's been hugely helpful. I'm very grateful to my past self.
Yeah, totally. Oh, well, this has been such an interesting conversation. It's always so good to talk to you. I know I have kind of like a belief, like in terms of like manifesting things, that when I'm really excited about something, and I actually do have a project like this on the go right now, my process is to actually like not talk about it for a little bit and just like kind of let it work itself out in the ethers. I don't know whether it's like it gets me more nervous about it if I talk about it, but I've, kind of heard ideas around sort of that sort of thing. I think you've talked about that a bit too. Do you want to kind of talk a bit about that and how it's playing into, anything involving your writing at the moment?
Sure. Yeah, I've always been an oversharer, just like pathological oversharer. People often tell me, "Oh, you're so brave for putting it out there." No, I just can't shut up. And it's something that I've been thinking about more and more, is keeping something for myself
Yeah,
and holding something close and letting something kind of germinate in the dark. And I think that's the phase I'm in
yeah,
with my book project right now for quite some time. As you know, I could not shut up about it. And in many ways, that is definitely still true. But in other ways, it's feeling very tender to me and very vulnerable. And it is actually taking shape, and I almost feel protective of it. And so
yeah,
I'm less likely to talk about the details publicly, I think, because it is feeling almost so exciting to me. And it's this thing that is growing that I am feeding and I am tending, this little monster. And I love it. And I want to kind of protect it and wait until it's ready to share. But
yeah.
having said that, a lot of excerpts from the book are being published right now, and if you follow me on Twitter and you check my website, you can see some of those pieces and get an idea, some of the flavor of the book. But the creature itself, I think I'm just going to kind of keep it quiet for now.
I really believe in that. Like, and I think I love the way you put it, like, let it germinate in the dark and just being protective of it. And yeah, that's exciting that some excerpts are being published. Where can people follow you if they want to read more about you and about your work?
The best place is probably my website, which is katehorowitz.net. Kate Horowitz, one word. You can also find me on Twitter at delightmonger, and then I'm also on Instagram at Kate's Writing.
Excellent. I'll definitely include a link in the description of this podcast to all of those. Well, it's been so great to talk to you, Kate. I can't wait to have you back for another episode sometime. I always love talking to you. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Same to all of that. Big, emphatic same to all of it. Yeah, thank you so much. It was so good to be here.
Aw, thanks, Kate. Well, I can't wait to talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Down to Art, and if you're interested in any of my classes or seeing my paintings, you can check out my work at kristygordon.com or look at the online classes I have at kristygordoncourses.com, where you can learn about my online art mentoring program as well as the different streamed online classes that I have. If you've never taken any of my classes, I would suggest you start with the self-portrait class. So thank you for joining us today.